Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kip Adams with me today, a lovely Monday afternoon, and a little bit of news we had to take care of, so push the podcast back just a bit. But Kip, how is this treating you? We have basically reached a couple days after the draft. You know, the hangover of sitting there and watching 7 rounds should have subsided. How is a new Monday and a chance to regroup treating?
Yeah, I'm refreshed and ready to go. New month. Coaches, out there hitting the road to see recruits. Again, I don't really. There truly is no off season in this, and there's still plenty to talk about. But I gotta be honest with you, that draft kind of took its toll. It felt like this year's draft was just. I know they're all the same length, but it just felt like it was going on forever. I know the coverage, they like to drag it out, but some of these teams taking, the full however many minutes they had to make the pick when we all knew who they were taking. It took its toll. We were just kind of waiting there and just kind of waiting to see if some of these guys were going to go toward the end, and they did. But man, it was a marathon. I'm ready to get to talk about that draft, but I'm just really just ready to turn the page and start breaking down some new things, because that draft was a long process, and congratulations to all the former players, but obviously the former Georgia players that now have an opportunity to play in the NFL.
Yeah, you're not kidding with the length. I swear, I think Saturday took much longer than it used to, because what was funny, and I was even messaging you as it was going on. We had plans, my fiance and I, for like 7 o'clock, and I was like, I'll be done by 5 at the latest. And I'm messaging you like, I gotta go. Like, I have to go get ready. Like this, you had a Motley Crue concert, which I'm not complaining. Who else performed? Fallout Boy. You had every YouTube influencer from here
From
to
Canada.
Australia. You just it was a bit much, but they're gonna milk it. I get why it was that way, but I was really running out the door once Mr. Irrelevant was announced.
Yeah, it's and then it was on to the undrafted free agents, and obviously, a couple Georgia players were able to get some camp invites for that. But overall, it was entertaining, obviously, and we covered Georgia, and some of us are Falcons fans, so we got to kind of watch that as well. But it kind of seemed like the state of Pennsylvania took over the draft with what their two professional teams did, and obviously Georgia fans now are out there looking at Eagles and Steelers gear. Just an interesting how it all went down, and how those teams were able to get 5 Georgia players, and obviously the Rams grabbing a couple as well. But I think overall, few surprises. It seems like a year ago we were talking about Nakobe Dean and kind of where we thought he might go, and similar situations this year with a couple Georgia players in this draft with Darnell Washington and Keely Ringo. So that's kind of where my mind thought when I'm looking over this draft and saying, did anything surprise me? I think it's a reminder that I guess NFL teams, sometimes they overthink things, but also sometimes there are things that, maybe we're not privy to in the draft process.
Well, let's jump right into it, Kip. 10 Georgia players are drafted, 3 more sign after the fact. We'll go through it real quick. 3 first-rounders, Jalen Carter to the Eagles, Broderick Jones to the Steelers, Nolan Smith also to the Eagles. There was a little bit of a pattern there with Philadelphia. The third round, Darnell Washington finally goes off the board to the Steelers. A couple of fourth-round picks. Keely Ringo again goes to the Eagles. Stetson Bennett to the Rams. I believe he was the 7th quarterback off the board. He went in the 4th round. 5th round, Chris Smith to the Raiders. 5th round, Robert Bill to the San Francisco 49ers. Warren McClendon also goes to the Rams. And in the 7th round, the 10th and final Georgia player picked was Kenny McIntosh, who went to the Seattle Seahawks. We'll kind of go individually with some of these guys, but just on the whole, you see these 10 guys, where they landed, What do you make of this draft class from Georgia? A class that wound up standing beside Alabama with the most players picked from one school at 10.
I think that's right where we kind of had it. I thought 10 guys would get drafted. For the most part, it kind of ran to how we expected. A couple guys went slightly earlier than we thought. One, I don't think a lot of people had pegged Stetson Bennett to go in the fourth round. Myself, I thought, mid sixth round for him. And, he goes 128th overall to, I don't know what your projection was, but I don't know if you could pick really a better situation for him as far as just looking at that, the Rams roster, basically it's just Matthew Stafford. And then, maybe Stetson slides right in as the backup to a quarterback that has missed some time and, is not a spring chicken. Everyone kind of joked that, they're basically the same age. So you got a couple veteran quarterbacks in there and a good situation for Stetson to go in there and potentially have a legitimate role. So for him, and then I guess the other one might be as far as just guys going earlier than maybe expected. I think Robert Beal going inside the top 200. Trying to project where he was going to go was kind of difficult with the his combine performance at 40 time kind of put him on the radar as far as his projections go. I thought he might go right around pick 200 in the sixth round as well. So for him to go in the fifth round, again, a guy that not only tested well, but got a lot of playing time the last 2 years at Georgia and obviously led Georgia in sacks one year as well. So also, going to San Francisco, an opportunity for him to make that roster, make an impact. But other than that, it was really just about Darnell Washington and Keely Ringo being on the board a little bit longer than what we projected. And with, some medical things popping up with both of those, that makes it make a little bit more sense because, Darnell Washington, we were talking about, a potential first round pick there and a guy that, may have been the most talented tight end in the draft. And then obviously Keely Ringo, the size, the testing numbers, and he has good film out there as well. We thought he might make it into the first round. So for them to go into the third and fourth round, a little bit of surprise there. But when things come out as far as medical, like we said with Keely Ringo, with Nakobe Dean last year, and then also with Jamari Sawyer last year, guys are on the board a lot longer than we expected. But as we saw with Jamari, you can definitely make a lot of teams regret that. And I think, you look at Darnell Washington, that's definitely a guy that has a chance to do just that.
Looking at this class as a whole, something, and I believe I'm going to write something about this on Tuesday, mention it in one of my Hills spiel, is checking out, when you look at this group as a whole, look at the situations the majority of these guys landed in. These are really, really good teams. The Eagles picked 3 Georgia players. They played for the Super Bowl. Probably should have won the Super Bowl, really, if you look at how that game played out. You look at the Rams, they are rebuilding, but they've been there and have that Super Bowl. Vegas is kind of the outlier getting Chris Smith because they're trying to build up, but they got a guy that a lot of people believe in Josh McDaniels, and a guy that could wind up turning things around there in Las Vegas. But you look at Pittsburgh. Other than like New England, there's a few teams in that run, but Pittsburgh is like the ideal situation of, consistent winner. My entire life of watching football, I can't really think of a losing season Pittsburgh's had. They are always so very good. It's probably not a coincidence. They've got a few Georgia players there with the Steelers, with Darnell, with Broderick Jones, and also having George Pickens last year. So, Robert Beal with the San Francisco 49ers. They're a team that a lot of people think could be in contention again. Remember, they played in the NFC Championship against those Eagles. Kenny McIntosh with the Seahawks. There's not really, I would say outside of Chris Smith with the Raiders, all these teams could very well be in the conference championship games come next winter. They're really good teams, and you think that's great situations for those Georgia guys. Some of those guys may not be able to start right away because of that, but it really could probably serve them in the long run. They are in franchises that know how to win. They know what winning looks like. They know the standard. And I think that's only going to set these guys up well to have success in the NFL and to be able to have a lasting impact in the league, getting a chance to start with such really good franchises.
Yeah, and then overall, I mean, looking at this draft and looking at the guys, specifically from Georgia that were selected and seeing, again, was it 5 more guys on the defensive side of the ball get drafted, and you see all the graphics go out from Georgia and other accounts looking at that 2021 Georgia defense now. Every starter I think was drafted, but then you also had backups. Jalen Carter was technically not a starter, and then Channing Tindall going in the third round, a guy that never even started at Georgia going in the third round last year. Robert Beal and even Amir Speed. I know he ended up at Michigan State, but he was drafted in the 7th round. That's 15 players on that defense getting drafted. I think that's remarkable. And obviously having 25 guys now drafted in 2 years. They set the single draft record last year with 15, and now they have the 2-year draft record at 25. I mean, it kind of just tells you, about the program Kirby Smart's built there. I mean, and there are still guys from that defense who are still playing college football from that could still be drafted. I mean, Kamari Lassiter was on that roster, Smile Munden, Javon Bullard, Jamon Dumas-Johnson. They ended up having close to 20 guys that played snaps on that defense getting drafted, which is just incredible for the program. But overall, I think you look at this draft. I think it went about how you expect it to go overall for Georgia as far as guys drafted, and even at the end, watching that video of Kenny McIntosh get drafted by the Seahawks. And I know that they kind of have a couple young guys there in Kenneth Walker, and they drafted another running back in the 2nd round. But that you want to talk about a team that loves to utilize the running back position. I don't think Kenny McIntosh, even though he got taken in the 7th round, dinged a little bit because of that 40 time. I don't think he could have walked into a program that's going to, give an opportunity to play a big role in a rushing attack. And the Seahawks, they've had some good ones over the years, but it seems like they draft running backs every year, but then they use those running backs. So still a good situation for him, as you said. So I think a lot of these guys are going to have a chance to stick and make an impact in the league.
I think my favorite thing from the weekend was some of the Seahawks fans that I follow. When they started drafting running backs, they were like, Pete can't help himself. Like that's like he just has to go get him a running back. Then they get Kenny and make it 2. We will take a quick break, come back, talk a little bit more in depth about some of these guys who were picked, and then also talk a little bit about the transfer portal and why we had to delay the podcast a few minutes, a big addition for Georgia men's basketball. Welcome back, everybody. Well, let's start, Kip, with the first round. 3 Georgia players go off the board. You have Jalen Carter, 9th overall, to the Philadelphia Eagles, who traded up with the Chicago Bears to make that pick. 14th overall, you've got Broderick Jones to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers also traded up. They traded up with the New England Patriots to make that pick. And then 30th overall, Nolan Smith also goes to the Eagles. That was the Eagles' original pick there as the runner-up in the Super Bowl. What did you make of the landing spots for all 3 of these guys? How sort of the board fell with these Georgia players, and the fact that they are all headed to the state of Pennsylvania in 2 franchises that are very well considered Super Bowl contenders in year 1 for these guys?
Yeah, with the Eagles, some people were like, well, this is a team that I think had the 3rd most sacks in NFL history last year. Kind of why would they, go back to the well? But I think that's exactly why, they went and made sure they got more pass rushers. Because you kind of look at their roster, and the guys they got coming back are kind of they're on 1-year deals. getting up there in age, and they're already preparing for the future, just like they did with last year. You're bringing guys like Jordan Davis and Kobe Dean, not because you need them now, because you're going to need them, in the future. You prepare for next season a year ahead. It's kind of what I think they're doing with Nolan Smith. Having a guy like Hassan Reddick already on the roster, a guy that he got projected as far as his comp that got brought up all the time. Well, now he's going to get to play, alongside him and learn from him, but, eventually maybe replace him. So, and then with Jalen Carter, that's a natural fit, being back there right next to Jordan Davis. That's as smooth a transition as you can possibly get. So then for Broderick Jones, we mentioned with the, the Aaron Rodgers trade and kind of shuffling of those first round picks, we had all projected Broderick Jones to go to the New York Jets all along. But, again, they went from 13th to 15th. And so at that point, I sat there and was like, well, I don't think he's going to get to the Jets. So it made sense that he was going to go around 13th, 14th pick, and thought the Patriots would be a good fit, but the Steelers saw their guy and made the move to make sure they got him. And so I think that's a great fit for him. He has the ability to kind of slide in right there and be your blindside protector for, a second-year quarterback. And then that's really important. If you're trying to get a guy that, to make some strides in year two and making sure that he is well protected is paramount. So I think it really works out for Broderick Jones. I think he was going to be, that franchise tackle, regardless of if he was the first, second, or third offensive tackle off the board. He was going to go right there in the early teens. So no real surprises there. Nolan Smith going at the end of the round. That's just, good value for the Eagles. A guy that, I thought would go in the teens, maybe 15 to 20. But also just, everything that he brings to, the Eagles franchise. They're getting a guy that as a rookie is going to be a strong presence in that locker room. And I don't think effort or, setting the edge, things like that will ever be an issue for him. He's always going to take a lot of pride in how he plays. So they got another outstanding player, and, Nolan gets to be a first round pick after, having to kind of stand there on the sidelines for that second half of Georgia's second national championship run. So you got to like what you saw. The NFL still placed a high value on him, even though he didn't get to play the second half of the year. And I think he's got a good situation as well.
I think you look at all three, very good landing spots and a chance for all three to shine, especially right away. I wrote about this on Sunday, but Broderick Jones, now he's going to be counted on to protect Kenny Pickett. They have high hopes for that offense, and I'm really intrigued just to see how he does in that role. When you look outside of the first round, Kip, who is a player that was picked from Georgia that you think could really turn heads that, people may forget about because maybe they were picked on Saturday? You kind of lose track of what's going on, but in the long run could really pay off big dividends for their new team.
Well, just a guy that was kind of an afterthought as far as the draft process goes, just because of a lot of these, high profile guys. But you look at Warren McClendon, a guy that didn't get picked in the first 4 rounds, but has played a lot of football for Georgia. A lot of really good film for him, and you never really had to worry about that, that right tackle spot during his time at Georgia. He just always played consistently well in pass protection. Solid run blocker as well, but not a guy that tests off the charts or. When the NFL scouts were looking, they didn't see, like franchise prototypical left tackle from him. But you still look at, they have Rob Havestein in there. He's not getting any younger for the Rams. And I think he's a guy that has played good football for them, been consistent for them, just like Warren McClendon. But at the same time, I think you're looking at a situation where Warren can come in, kind of be their swing tackle for now. If they need help at left tackle with Joe Noteboom, he could step right in. But I think right now, backup right tackle with a chance to kind of step in there and take over when the Rams are ready to move on from Rob. And I think, that could be a situation maybe next year, maybe the year after that, where he gets an opportunity to be a long-time starter in the league. And once you plug Warren McClendon in, you might try to find replacements for him, but you might not be able to, because I think he could have a long career in the NFL.
I think that's a really good pick. I'm going to stick with one of his teammates, one of his former teammates, Stetson Bennett. I think that this is such an intriguing fit with Stetson going to Los Angeles Rams. And I tweeted this and I wrote about it after the fact. What I keep coming back to is that, the Rams rolled with Baker Mayfield last season. He's a guy that Stetson has gotten a lot of comparison to. I mean, the first time anyone around Georgia really talked about Stetson was when Stetson was playing the role of Baker Mayfield, getting ready for that Rose Bowl against Oklahoma. He did such a good job with the scout team. I think he walks into a good situation. You got a veteran quarterback. They are right now the only two quarterbacks on that roster. I wouldn't be surprised if you see them add somebody else by the time they get into camp and whatnot. But Stetson's got a chance to prove himself, and we've seen it happen again and again. It's not lost on me that his home stadium is going to be SoFi Stadium, which, Kip, we were both there. We got to see Stetson show out, as weird as it was in the rain inside SoFi Stadium. But I think it's a great situation. They are rebuilding, having to reload after sort of, going all in to win that Super Bowl, and you're kind of having the after effect of that. But I think he's a guy, I'm really fascinated once they get into the preseason to try to watch him some, just to see what he's able to do, what he shows. There's no pressure on him to play right away. You got Matthew Stafford, who has had such a great career and had a really good run in Los Angeles as well. So really fascinating to see what he does there. My biggest takeaway is he's got a great opportunity, and it's just up for him to take advantage of it. And as we've seen in the past, he is usually come through in flying colors and passed with flying colors when he's had those chances.
Yeah, I mean, his college career ended with him meeting Stafford there in the tunnel, and now he gets to to learn from him, pick his brain. I think it's an outstanding fit. I think you look at the Rams coaching staff, and I think it's pretty clear that Sean McVay and them, I mean, they thought Stetson Bennett was one of the most talented quarterbacks in the draft. And we have kind of said that throughout the process that, once again, he's just getting dinged for things that seemingly don't exist. I mean, we know that, some things that happened to him after the national championship, as far as the, decision-making that came into question. But then you see the combine, and you see him throwing out there with Will Levis in the same group. And the eye test told you that at worst, Stetson was throw for throw with Will Levis making the same quality throws. But I mean, if you didn't know who either of them were and where they're supposed to go in the draft, you'd walk away saying, I mean, Stetson was the best out of that group, is what I thought. That's what the eye test told me. And it didn't help Stetson so much as it seemingly hurt Will Levis in my eyes, because he was a guy that for weeks, he had the strongest arm. He told everyone, made claims that he was going to go out there and show off his cannon. And it wasn't, it didn't look any better. It didn't look better than Stetson's. And so that's a guy that people were talking about going to the Colts number 4 overall, or being, one of the first 2 or 3 quarterbacks off the board. And Stetson matched him, if not, did better than him. And so why weren't people talking about Stetson, as being in that conversation when he's, the same size, if not a little bit bigger than Bryce Young, who went number 1 overall. So you have these questions that he still has to answer. It's like, him being a former walk-on still gets brought up as part of his evaluation when it's who's the best quarterback. And the Rams, they showed. I mean, he was one of the top quarterbacks in the draft of them, and they feel like they got a steal. So, hats off to Stetson for just sticking with the process, and now, having a real opportunity to have a meaningful NFL career and continue to prove a lot of these doubters wrong.
Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the transfer portal, Kip. It officially closed on Sunday with the calendar turning to May. You look at it, Georgia only had 5 scholarship players who went in. Bear Alexander, who committed to USC. Ryan Davis, who committed to UCF. Griffin Scroggs, Sean Washington, who have not committed anywhere, and Marcus Washington Jr., who, as we were recording, committed to Louisville. So we will get to that when we get done. I'll just give my quick take, and then Kip, you can chip in and chime in with your thoughts. On the whole, other than losing Bear, which I think he was a very promising defensive lineman, I thought he had a chance to really shine in the 2023 season. On the whole, I think Georgia came out pretty well when it comes to the transfer portal. I was of the mindset that you could see maybe a few receivers leave because they are ridiculously deep at wide receiver. But you look at the guys who left. Bear was the biggest loss by far. I thought he had a chance to shine, and they're going to have guys step up really in his absence as they continue to try to replace Jalen Carter. But Ryan Davis leaves an inside linebacker room that is ridiculously deep. He was the most veteran guy, so you are losing something there, especially when you consider that you had lost Tresman Marshall this past offseason. But Griffin Scroggs, he was buried on the depth chart. I believe he was the third team center at G-Day. Sean Washington wasn't even with the team by the time they opened spring, so his decision to leave was sort of an afterthought, him actually going in the portal. And Marcus Washington Jr., I think, has got a lot of promise, was a guy that reclassified, so he got to Georgia a year early, but there was no path to playing anytime soon. And then you consider they're bringing in several new DBs in the summer. There was no path forward for him. I think he's got a bright future now that he's going to Louisville. Kip, what are your thoughts on the guys who left and the hole that might have been left behind by them still in Athens?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to lose any sleep over Georgia losing, 15 guys to the transfer portal this offseason. But the days are also gone of people making a big deal about it. I remember, when Georgia won that first national championship, I think they had, 12 guys leave in the week or two after that. And, people called it a mass exodus. Why are all these guys leaving after Georgia won it all? And that's just how the transfer portal is now. You look at Colorado, that's an expansion team right now, basically, just starting completely over from scratch there. But, Georgia technically had to have some guys leave. And right now, if you look at the scholarship numbers, they're officially, I think, 87 scholarship players. But, you have a guy like CJ Washington who, unfortunately, we would expect to probably go on medical scholarship at some point. And then, there's also the possibility that, at least one or if not, two or more of the incoming freshmen are not first-year scholarship players, going on scholarship in year two. Georgia's done that pretty much every year the last, 4 or 5 years. So I'm sure there's a guy or two out there that's, coming in as a, I guess basically a blue shirt. But so right now, this is the roster. And so you look at the guys that left, as we said before, with guys like Amir Speed going in the draft and other guys going to other places like Jermaine Johnson going to Florida State, Tyreek Stevenson, this is just how it's going to be. They're going to lose really, quality players, starter caliber players to other programs. But you lose a guy like A.D. Mitchell, you replace them with Dominic Lovett and the transfer portal, Ra Thomas. Those are guys that are going to come in and kind of help your program, if not start, but play meaningful minutes. So, and then with Marcus Washington Jr., and then they bring in a guy like Smoke Bowie. So Georgia got some guys in on their own. I think this is the roster Georgia's going to roll with right now as it is, because I didn't really see a kind of a running back that might fit what Georgia's looking for. So I think this is what, Georgia is rolling with. And obviously Bear's a big loss, a guy that has a lot of talent, but they got depth in that room. It might not be like the guys that we've seen the last couple of years that, are top 10 overall picks. But I think it's just as far as depth, they're going to be able to rotate in, a good solid 8 or 9 guys who are going to be able to lean in on the offensive linemen and impose their will in the third and fourth quarter. They got depth there. Trey Scott's brought in some really good players, and they got a lot of leadership as well. So it's still a really strong room. And overall, this Georgia roster is just really stacked from top to bottom. And I think when you look at those 15 guys leaving, and that shows you how deep this roster is. Those are really good players that left, and still Georgia's stacked. Every position room on the roster has got a lot of depth and a lot of talent.
Gonna wrap this up real quick with a Georgia men's basketball minute. As we were getting ready to record this podcast, Georgia gets their third pickup from the transfer portal on the hardwood. USF center Russell Chiwa. I'm probably butchering that name, but my apologies if so. 7 foot, 285-pound center has committed to Georgia. Big win. He was a guy that Georgia had targeted for quite a while. He was one of the 3 guys that were in town for G-Day, and 2 of the 3 wound up committing to Georgia. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So 3 pickups from the portal. I believe they may have 2 scholarships still open, so it'll be intriguing to see what happens. But Georgia had to have this, and I think it bodes well for them going forward.
Got to win that battle on the boards. Big one for Georgia there.
No doubt about it. Well, we're going to wrap this episode up. Appreciate Kip popping on. Appreciate everybody who checked this out. But we are out of here. Until next time, take care.